Senator Bernie Sanders going head-to-head as 6 states vote today to choose a Democratic nominee for president. More than 350 delegates are up for grabs today. Biden is headed to today's election with a double-digit lead in delegate. That's gold mine, Michigan. Joining me right now is Nevada Senator and Senate Armed Services and Senate Budget Committee member Kevin Cramer. Sir, good to see you, Senator. Thanks very much for joining us.
Good to be with you, but my friends in North Dakota would want me to correct the state. It's North Dakota, not Nevada.
Of course. No, my apologies, sir. My apologies. It's sitting right in front of me, and that was a slip-up. Let me ask you what your expectations are for today's Super Tuesday, mini Super Tuesday.
Yeah, my expectations, Maria, are that momentum is a very difficult thing to stop in most things, and certainly in politics. That said, back home in North Dakota, Bernie Sanders is, I think, likely to win. North Dakota's a caucus state. He won by, he got 2/3 of the vote in 2016 against Hillary Clinton. There's very little Democratic activism left in the state, and what is left is very radical. So he could very well have a win in North Dakota, but it seems to me that Medicare for All is not playing well with the union crowd in Michigan.
Well, we wouldn't expect it to, Senator, would we?
No,
and Kelly Torrance here.
Wouldn't.
What are you looking at in terms of what tonight turnout, for example, might mean come November? A lot of people are saying Michigan's going to have very good turnout for the Democrats tonight. And the Democrats really, of course, want to take back Michigan from President Trump.
Well, there's no question. I mean, Michigan is sort of ground zero in terms of the states in the general election, and President Trump did barely win it last time. However, I think when you throw out the policy issues and have an honest debate head to head, whether it's Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden versus Donald Trump's got a very good message for Michigan. I mean, he has delivered on the things he said he'd deliver on. He has definitely brought some manufacturing back to the Midwest, and Michigan, chief among them. His work on trade has been fantastic, and so I think when it comes to blue-collar Michigan, Donald Trump has, he has the message, he has the policies that he gets to run on, not just talk about, and that's an advantage.
Senator, how do you think the latest strife in the markets and even to some degree the economy is factoring into that messaging you were talking about with respect to the Democrats having a shot here if the economy continues to, say, have an impact from the coronavirus?
Well, they've definitely been cheerleading for a down economy for some time now. I don't think there were many happy people yesterday, except maybe Democratic activists looking for an opportunity to beat Donald Trump. But when it comes to the fundamentals of an economy, setting the market aside for a moment, I mean, last week we had a phenomenal report, a jobs report on February jobs. That same day, I think the markets were down about 1,000 points. I think for people in places like the Midwest and particularly Michigan, they're looking at their own paychecks, they're looking at their own job security, and they're going, wow, this is pretty good. Now, having said all of that, how the leadership deals with this and gets us through this coronavirus will have some impact on how people view the leadership of Donald Trump. To this point, I think he's been very good, even though many in the mainstream media, again, are cheerleading for disaster and trying to spin disaster and really talk us into it. By and large, I think he's done a fantastic job.
Well, it's not just the mainstream media, but it's also Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, right? I mean, they are attacking this president daily, saying that he doesn't have the right leadership in the face of this, even though he made some serious decisions right out of the gate in terms of stopping all planes, stopping all travel from China to just try to contain this. Yesterday, he talked about stimulus. Markets, of course, are bouncing back this morning after the president said that his administration is considering a number of ways to boost the economy in the wake of this outbreak. Here's what he said. Watch this, sir.
We're going to be meeting with House Republicans, Mitch McConnell, everybody, and discussing a possible payroll tax cut or relief, hourly wage earners getting help so that they can be in a position where they're not going to ever miss a paycheck.
So Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and National Council Economic Director Larry Kudlow meeting with Senate Republicans to discuss the economic impact of this coronavirus. What do you think, Senator? Can you get on board with this? Can you get on board with doing away with this payroll tax, 15%, 7.5% paid by workers for 90 days or possibly until year end? Is that something you would do? You would agree to?
Well, let's just say I'm open to persuasion, Maria, although I would say this sounds a little more like a safety net than it does a stimulus package. I think there are some things that we're working on that I'd rather see us get behind, like, let's pass this big highway bill that came out of our Environment and Public Works Committee unanimously, and put people to work and have at the end of it an appropriate federal infrastructure that has as its primary purpose the profitability of the private sector. If we need to, let's accelerate and elevate the rebuilding of our military and build more fighter jets faster and get our missile system up to date and modernize our nuclear triad. Some of the things that are the federal government's responsibility anyway, and at the end of it, we have something to show for it. Now, that's not to say I'm not against some sort of a short-term safety net, because there's no question there could be disruption in workers, in workers' ability to earn a living through all of this, and we need to be sensitive to that. But borrowing money and throwing it out into the street for a spending package isn't my instincts, let's just say. But I'm open to persuasion.
Senator, it's Dagan McDowell. One of the critical industries in your state is oil production. What are you hearing from those very companies? Do they need financial assistance, a bailout, if you will? Are you hearing that, given the collapse in the cost of crude oil?
Yeah, I haven't talked to a lot of people since yesterday. Obviously, yesterday was the big day and the big geopolitical news, if you will. I think what they'd prefer, of course, is obviously a higher price. And I worry about this in the long run. There's no question you'll almost certainly see some sort of a tightening. You'll see the value chain in oil production will be squeezed first by the producers, and then we'll see how the producers themselves come out of it on the other side. But at a time of demand decline, having a glut is not healthy, but then to have an oversupply strategy on the part of the Russians and the Saudis is devastating. I think we've got to have some geopolitical leadership here that brings all of this back into play, because frankly, all of this other stuff is just sort of emotional. But when it comes to commodities, supply and demand and fundamentals still matter in the long run, and this looks like it could be a very long down cycle if something doesn't happen.
So you've seen lots of cycles like this before. What do you think about $33 a barrel of oil? I mean, what does that do to the shale producers who have been so important to the economic growth story with all of their rigs putting out there? How significant are you expecting the rig pullback to be now that we're seeing this cut in oil?
Yeah, so Maria, I'm afraid it'll be quite significant. Again, depending on, of course, how long this lasts and how long it's projected to last. But we are seeing some really wonderful CapEx numbers coming into this year. And now, of course, I expect that we're going to see some pullback in the shale play, and including and especially North Dakota, where it's fairly expensive anyway. North Dakota producers already get paid a discount as a result of, sort of how landlocked we are and the lack of adequate transportation infrastructure. So I think it could be quite devastating. But I'm hopeful that this will be short-lived. I'm hopeful that Vladimir Putin and the Saudis can come together and we can do something about this supply glut and just get that price back up. But to be honest, until it gets around $60, it's a pretty tight squeeze in the oil patch.
Yeah, I mean, do you think Russia wants to kill the shale industry?
Well, they probably would like that, and maybe Russia would like Donald Trump to get a black eye as well. Yeah. Who knows? But remember, they're more dependent on it than we are.
Right.
While we are very dependent on oil, and oil is very good for our economy. We're not a petro state. We have a much more diverse economy, and that's been demonstrated through other down cycles in oil price. So we're more likely to weather this than either of the other two countries that are arguing right now. So none of us should have to go through it and wants to go through it. But if we had to go through it, we're probably better positioned than they are.
Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much. We'll be watching the developments.
My pleasure. Thank you, Maria.
Senator Kevin Cramer from North Dakota.